For our reading from Mark's Gospel this morning, we have skipped about 8 chapters in the story. We're fast forwarding to a turning point in Jesus' ministry. And this story is a very visual story. We're being told something that was seen, that was extraordinary. So I'd like to invite you to close your eyes as you listen to this story and let the images unfold in your mind and heart. Six days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. From ancient times, people have found themselves transformed by mountaintop experiences. Think of Moses receiving the law on Mount Sinai at the same moment he was experiencing the terror and majesty of God's dazzling, dangerous presence. Or Elijah, hiding in the cleft of the rock, wading through wind, earthquake, and fire for God to reveal the divine presence. And here, this inner circle of Jesus, Peter, James, and John, after being taken up the mountain by Jesus, see an unbelievable transformation. They see Jesus' garments as an unearthly white, and he is flanked by Moses and Elijah, who probably have an inkling as to what he's going through. There's something about this reading that makes my hair stand on end. There's something about an unveiling, because that's what this truly is. It's a revelation. It's an uncovering of the true nature of Jesus. There's something about it that makes my heart beat just a little faster, even now. Even here. And it makes me remember my own mountaintop experiences as well as those others have shared with me. I've always loved sunrises and sunsets. I have albums filled with fading photographs of sunrises and sunsets I took all through my childhood and teen years. But when I moved to the southern tier of New York, I began to experience the sky in a whole new way. For some reason, the sky seems bigger here. more extravagantly beautiful. My children grew used to me saying, "Look, look," and pointing as we drove home from school or from play practice. They even coined a term for a particular kind of sky that got me really excited, in which beams of sunlight pierced through cloud formations to form spectacular rays. They called it godlight, which, of course, is exactly what it was. The play of the light in the sky stirs my heart. It awakens something in me that has been dozing. It reminds me there are forces. There is a force that is mysterious. And even if science can do a decent job of explaining the cloud formations or the stunning displays of color, it still remains somehow beyond my grasp. The glory of a beautiful sky reminds me of the one who created it, and it fills me with wonder. Presbyterian writer Anne Lamott has a book called Help, Thanks, Wow, The Three Essential Prayers. In it, she writes, "The third prayer, wow, is often offered with a gasp, a sharp intake of breath, when we can't think of another way to capture the sight of shocking beauty or destruction, of a sudden unbidden thought or insight or an unexpected flash of grace. Wow means we are not dulled to wonder. We click into being fully present when we're stunned into that gasp by the sight of a birth or the images of the World Trade Center towers falling, or being in a fjord at dawn for the first time. Wow is about having one's mind blown by the mesmerizing or the miraculous, the veins in a leaf, birdsong, volcanoes. Wow, because you are speechless, but not quite. You can manage, barely, this one syllable. That's exactly it. And we are all different as to what makes us say, wow. About 20 years ago, I had the pleasure of attending an APSE conference, that's the Association of Presbyterian Church Educators, with one of the sweetest human beings I have ever known. Her name was Betty. Now, Betty was a tiny woman with a lion's heart, a soft voice who spoke powerful words, a single woman who was part of the spirit and faith formation of children her entire life. By the time we went together to APSE, Betty was 84 years old, and she had been teaching Sunday school for more than 60 years, without interruption. She, I thought, might like to go to an education conference with me. And it took place in a big Boston hotel with workshops by wonderful teachers and preachers, and it offered worship experiences in which we were among close to 1,000 souls joining together in song and prayer. Still, I worried that the conference might be a little overwhelming for her. She was a quiet sort of a person. And I recognized it was a tiring experience for her because she did take time for a nap every afternoon of the conference back in our hotel room. As we drove home at the end of the conference, I asked Betty how she'd liked it. She was quiet for a few moments. She did not have words. Finally, she said, "I don't know what to say. I've never known anything like it. It was truly a mountaintop experience." That was the first time I had ever heard anyone use that phrase. For Betty, the mountaintop was worship of God Almighty with a great throng of people, the way it's described in the Psalms. Her singular smallness joining with the many to create thunderous songs of praise. For me, it's moments of wonder when nature reminds me of its maker. For you, it may be something else. Leaf, birdsong, volcano. What makes you gasp and wonder? What makes you say, wow? One thing is for certain, You can go looking for mountaintop experiences, but there are no guarantees you'll find them where or when you expect them. You can't force them and you can't manufacture them. Writer John Krakauer was an experienced climber when Outside Magazine offered him the opportunity to go to Nepal on a paid expedition to climb Mount Everest in 1996. He jumped at the chance, but he understood that even with his climbing experience, it was risky, possibly foolhardy. He says, "I knew better, but I went to Everest anyway." Months later, Krakow described his arrival at the summit. "Standing at the top of the world, one foot in China and the other in Nepal, I cleared ice from my oxygen mask, hunched a shoulder against the wind, and stared absently down at the vastness of Tibet. I understood on some dim, detached level that the sweep of earth beneath my feet was a spectacular sight. I'd been fantasizing about this moment and the release of emotion that would accompany it for many months. But now that I was finally here, actually standing on the summit of Mount Everest, I just couldn't summon the energy to care." Even at the summit of the world's most storied and dangerous mountain, there is no guarantee that you will have a mountaintop experience. By their very nature, these are gifts. They come from outside us, and they pierce us with their beauty and their power. The question is, what do we do with them? When Jesus takes his friends up the mountain, it's not clear what his objective is. We've already noticed that from time to time, Jesus goes off by himself to pray. Maybe he's decided to include his friends in this prayer time. And while they're there, not only do they see something, this dazzling vision of Jesus, Moses, Elijah, they also hear something. In fact, their seeing is interrupted, as if they need to stop focusing on how very dazzled they are. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." There it is. God gets their attention with the fireworks and then turns down the visuals so that the divine word can enter their hearts without the distractions of glory. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." We have a slight logistical problem in interpreting exactly what God is getting at here because, as I mentioned earlier, we've skipped 8 chapters. We haven't heard here these last weeks all the things Jesus has been saying. When last seen by us, Jesus was still in the early days of his ministry. Now he has reached a turning point significant enough that God sees fit to mark it with this remarkable unveiling of who Jesus is. And our best hint about that comes at the end of the passage. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. We last saw Jesus at the beginning of his work. This passage points us towards the end. Jesus has already spoken to his friends about the death he expects to face, and now he talks of resurrection. And nobody knows exactly what that means. It is still a riddle, wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. Have you ever known something that you couldn't express? Have you ever felt convinced of something you couldn't explain? That seems to be the experience God has given Peter, James, and John. Jesus shines with a radiance not of this earth, but somehow he's still Jesus. Moses and Elijah, towering figures from the story of God's people, are Jesus' companions for a time. But Peter, James, and John, late of the fishing game, are still his companions. Something extraordinary is shown and then clouded over, revealed and then hidden again. They have been given a revelation, an uncovering of who and what Jesus truly is. But it was there only for a few moments. The only thing that is clear is that voice telling them, listen. This is God's beloved. Listen. And the first thing God's beloved says is, keep yourselves, keep this quiet for a while. Keep it to yourselves. Until after the Son of Man has risen from the dead. Don't rush to interpretation, Jesus says. You don't understand this one just yet. You won't for a while. From ancient times, people have found themselves transformed by mountaintop experiences. We can have those experiences and maybe understand them in an instant. And we can have wow moments that need time to seep into us, that need reflection and more experience to help them to unravel. We cannot make mountaintop experiences happen, but we can open ourselves to them. We can create space in our lives for them. And when they come, we can notice that sharp intake of breath, the quickening of our pulse. We can let wonder overtake us. We don't need to understand immediately. We may not fully understand in this life. But God has unveiled something for us. God urges us to keep listening. And so we are changed. We are transformed in the light of God's glory. Thanks be to God. Amen.